The morning mist hung heavy over the ancient sandstone cliffs of Hocking Hills State Park as the sun began its slow ascent over southeastern Ohio. It was October 15th, 2014, and the autumn foliage painted the landscape in brilliant shades of amber, crimson, and gold. The air carried that distinctive crispness that only comes with October mornings in the Midwest, when summer's humidity finally surrenders to winter's approaching chill. For Mark Henderson, this was more than just another beautiful morning. It was his calling, his purpose, his home away from home. Mark had been a park ranger for 18 years, and at 42, he knew every trail, every hidden cave, every towering hemlock tree, and every subtle change in the seasons within the 2,300 acres of pristine wilderness he protected. His colleagues often joked that Mark had tree sap running through his veins instead of blood, but they said it with deep respect. There wasn't a soul in Logan County who didn't know Mark Henderson, and there wasn't a person who didn't trust him completely when it came to the safety and preservation of Ohio's natural treasures. Mark's relationship with Hocking Hills had begun long before he became a ranger. As a child growing up in nearby Lancaster, he had visited the park countless times with his grandfather, Robert Henderson, a retired coal miner who had developed a profound appreciation for nature after spending decades underground. Robert would bring young Mark to the park every weekend, teaching him to identify different tree species, showing him how to read animal tracks, and instilling in him a reverence for the natural world that would shape the rest of his life. "Nature doesn't belong to us, Mark," his grandfather would say as they sat by the waterfalls. "We belong to nature. Our job is to take care of it so it can take care of future generations." Those words had guided Mark through his education at Ohio University, where he studied environmental science and forestry management. After graduation, he had briefly considered positions with the National Park Service that would have taken him to more famous destinations like Yellowstone or the Grand Canyon, but something about Ohio's quiet beauty, its understated majesty, had called him home. Hocking Hills might not have had the towering peaks of the Rockies or the dramatic geysers of Wyoming, but it possessed a subtle power that spoke to Mark's soul. That morning, Mark's wife Sarah kissed him goodbye at their modest two-story home on the outskirts of Logan, just as she had done every morning for the past 15 years of their marriage. Their house sat on 3 acres of wooded land that Mark had carefully preserved in its natural state, creating a private sanctuary that reflected his professional values. Sarah often joked that their backyard was basically a miniature version of the state park, complete with native wildflowers, birdhouses, and a small pond that Mark had installed to attract local wildlife. Their twin daughters, Emma and Grace, were already at school, probably discussing their upcoming high school homecoming dance rather than worrying about their father's daily adventures in the wilderness. At 17, the twins had inherited their father's love of nature but were at that age where social activities and college preparations occupied most of their thoughts. Emma was leaning toward environmental engineering, while Grace showed a talent for wildlife photography that reminded Mark of his own passion for documenting the natural world. Sarah worked as a nurse at the Hocking Valley Community Hospital, and like most families in their tight-knit community, the Hendersons lived a simple, honest life, centered around service to others. Their marriage was built on shared values and mutual respect, strengthened by countless weekend hiking adventures and camping trips that had created a treasure trove of family memories. Sarah often accompanied Mark on his off-duty explorations of the park, and she knew the trails almost as well as he did. "Be careful out there today," Sarah called out as Mark loaded his gear into his weathered Ford pickup truck. The weather forecast mentioned possible storms this afternoon. Channel 10 said there might be some severe weather moving in from the west. Mark smiled and waved, his ranger badge glinting in the morning sunlight as it caught the reflection from his shirt pocket. The badge was more than just identification. It represented his commitment to protecting and preserving the natural resources that countless visitors came to enjoy each year. "You know me, honey. I'll be extra cautious. Planning to check the Old Man's Cave trail system today. Lots of tourists expected for the fall colors. October is always our busiest month." As Mark drove the winding country roads toward the park headquarters, he couldn't help but feel grateful for his life. The route to work took him through small farming communities where families had lived for generations, past rolling hills dotted with century-old barns, and alongside creeks that flowed clear and cold from underground springs. Ohio might not have the towering mountains of Colorado or the vast deserts of Arizona, but Hocking Hills possessed a quiet majesty that spoke to his soul. The park attracted over 1 million visitors each year, drawn by its spectacular waterfalls, deep gorges, and hiking trails that revealed hidden wonders around every bend. The radio crackled to life as Mark pulled into the parking area at the ranger station. His supervisor, Chief Ranger Patricia Williams, was already coordinating the day's activities from the small but efficient headquarters building that served as the nerve center for park operations. Patricia had been Mark's mentor when he first started, and over the years they had developed a partnership built on mutual respect and shared dedication to their mission. She was nearing retirement after 35 years of service, and Mark knew that losing her institutional knowledge would be a significant challenge for the park. "Morning, Mark." Patricia's voice came through clearly. "We've got a busy day ahead. 3 large tour groups scheduled from Columbus, Cincinnati, and Dayton, and I want you to do a thorough safety check of the Upper Rim Trail near Old Man's Cave. There were reports of some loose rocks after last week's heavy rains, and I don't want any accidents with all these visitors coming in." Mark acknowledged the assignment and gathered his equipment: radio, first aid kit, emergency supplies, water bottles, energy bars, emergency blanket, whistle, and his trusty digital camera for documenting any safety concerns or maintenance needs. He also grabbed his hiking poles. A recent addition to his gear after a minor ankle injury the previous summer had reminded him that even the most experienced outdoorsman needed to respect the unpredictable nature of wilderness terrain. His backpack also contained a detailed topographical map of the area, though he could navigate the trails blindfolded after 18 years of daily patrols. The Old Man's Cave area was the crown jewel of Hocking Hills, featuring a spectacular recess cave formed by centuries of erosion and a stunning waterfall that plunged 60 feet into a crystal-clear pool below. Legend had it that a hermit named Richard Rowe had lived in the cave during the 1800s, giving the formation its distinctive name. The Upper Rim Trail offered breathtaking panoramic views of the surrounding forest, but it also presented challenges that required constant vigilance from park staff. Loose sandstone, wet leaves, and the occasional overconfident hiker created a combination that demanded respect and careful monitoring. As Mark began his patrol around 9:30 that morning, he radioed his position to dispatch and estimated he would complete his circuit by early afternoon. The fall weather was absolutely perfect. Crisp air with temperatures in the mid-60s, gentle breeze rustling through the colorful canopy, and enough cloud cover to keep the temperature comfortable for hiking. Early visitors were already arriving, cameras in hand, eager to capture the spectacular autumn display that made Ohio's Hocking Hills famous throughout the Midwest and beyond. Mark's routine was methodical and thorough, developed over years of experience and refined through countless patrols. He checked every guardrail for stability, tested every wooden bridge for structural integrity, examined the trail surface for potential hazards like loose rocks or erosion damage, and inspected overlooks for any signs of deterioration that could pose safety risks. He carried a small notebook where he recorded every observation, no matter how minor, knowing that small problems could quickly become major safety hazards if left unaddressed. He stopped frequently to chat with visitors, offering directions, sharing interesting facts about the local ecosystem, and ensuring everyone understood basic safety protocols. Mark had a gift for educating people about the natural world, without making them feel lectured. He could explain the geological processes that had created the park's dramatic landscape in terms that children could understand, while also providing detailed scientific information for visitors with more advanced interests. Children especially loved talking to Mark, who had developed a repertoire of stories and activities that made learning about nature exciting and memorable. He carried field guides for identifying local birds and plants, and he often organized impromptu nature education sessions when he encountered school groups or families with curious children. Parents frequently thanked him for sparking their children's interest in environmental conservation, and Mark considered these educational interactions to be among the most rewarding aspects of his job. Around 10:15 that morning, Mark encountered Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, an 83-year-old woman from Chillicothe, who had been visiting Hocking Hills annually for over 60 years. She was accompanied by her granddaughter, Jennifer, who was helping her navigate the trails that Mrs. Patterson had once hiked with ease. Mark spent nearly 20 minutes with them, sharing stories about how the park had changed over the decades and pointing out subtle details that only someone with his experience would notice. "The forest is different now than when I first started coming here," Mrs. Patterson told Mark, "but it's still magical. I'm glad there are people like you taking care of it." Mark helped them choose a route that would provide spectacular views while accommodating Mrs. Patterson's physical limitations. He also gave them his card and encouraged them to contact him if they needed any assistance during their visit. Interactions like this reminded Mark why he loved his job. He was not just protecting natural resources, but also ensuring that people of all ages and abilities could continue to experience the wonder and peace that nature provided. Around 11 o'clock, Mark encountered a family from Columbus celebrating their wedding anniversary with a hiking adventure. The couple, both in their 60s, was struggling slightly with the more challenging sections of the trail. The husband, David Morrison, was recovering from knee surgery, while his wife, Carol, was an avid hiker who was adjusting her usual pace to accommodate her husband's limitations. Mark spent nearly 30 minutes with them, sharing easier route options and fascinating stories about the park's history and geology. "We've been married 37 years, Carol told Mark, "and we've been coming to Hocking Hills since our honeymoon. David proposed to me right over there by Cedar Falls." Mark smiled and congratulated them on their anniversary, then shared some lesser-known viewpoints that would provide excellent photo opportunities without requiring strenuous hiking. He also told them about the legend of Old Man's Cave and explained how the unique sandstone formations had been created over millions of years through water erosion and geological processes. The husband later told investigators that Mark seemed completely normal, enthusiastic, and showed no signs of distress or unusual behavior. As the morning progressed, Mark documented several minor maintenance issues: a loose handrail near the cave entrance that needed tightening, some erosion on a side trail that required attention before it became a serious problem, a few fallen branches that needed removal to prevent visitors from tripping, and a section of wooden boardwalk that was showing signs of wear and would need replacement within the next year. He photographed each concern from multiple angles and made detailed notes in his logbook, planning to submit a comprehensive report to the maintenance crew when he returned to headquarters. Mark also noticed several positive developments during his patrol. A family of hawks that had been nesting in the area appeared to be thriving, with young birds successfully learning to hunt. The water quality in the streams looked excellent, with no signs of pollution or contamination. Wildflower populations that the park had been working to restore were showing good progress, and several rare species that had been reintroduced were establishing themselves successfully. The last confirmed sighting of Mark Henderson occurred at approximately 12:15 that afternoon. A group of college students from Ohio University, visiting the park for a geology field trip, remembered seeing him near the upper rim overlook, where he was examining what appeared to be damage to a section of safety fencing. The students, led by Professor James Mitchell, recalled that Mark waved and smiled when they passed by, calling out a friendly warning about staying back from the cliff edge. "He seemed completely normal," Professor Mitchell later told investigators. "He was doing exactly what you'd expect a ranger to be doing, checking safety equipment and making sure visitors were being careful. There was nothing unusual about his behavior or demeanor." One of the students, Sarah Kim, remembered Mark taking photographs of the damaged fencing and making notes in a small notebook. "He was very thorough," she said. "He seemed to be documenting everything carefully, like he was preparing a detailed report." Mark's scheduled radio check-in at 1 o'clock never came. Patricia Williams noticed the missed communication immediately. In 18 years of service, Mark had never failed to maintain contact during a patrol. The radio protocols were taken seriously by all park staff, both for safety reasons and to ensure effective coordination of daily operations. She attempted to reach him multiple times over the next hour, growing increasingly concerned as each call went unanswered. "Mark, this is base. Please respond," Patricia called repeatedly, her voice carrying an edge of worry that other staff members began to notice. By 2:30, Patricia had initiated the park's emergency response protocol. She contacted the Logan County Sheriff's Department and began organizing an immediate search effort. Her first step was to drive to Mark's last known location to look for any obvious signs of what might have happened. The initial search began with Patricia and 2 other rangers, Tom Bradley and Jennifer Walsh, retracing Mark's planned route. They found his truck exactly where he had parked it that morning, keys still in the ignition, with all his personal belongings secure inside. His lunch was still in a cooler on the passenger seat untouched. His logbook lay open on the dashboard, showing his neat handwriting documenting the morning's observations, including detailed notes about the maintenance issues he had identified. Everything appeared completely normal except for one troubling detail. Mark himself was nowhere to be found. His radio was missing, presumably still with him, but it was either turned off or malfunctioning because repeated attempts to contact him continued to fail. As word of the missing ranger spread throughout the park and surrounding community, an impressive response took shape with remarkable speed. Off-duty rangers canceled their plans and joined the search without being asked. Local volunteer fire departments mobilized their search and rescue teams, bringing specialized equipment and experienced personnel. The Logan County Sheriff's Department dispatched deputies with specialized training in wilderness recovery operations, while the Ohio Department of Natural Resources sent additional resources from other parks. Even visitors to the park, upon learning about the situation, offered to help in any way possible. A group of experienced hikers from Cleveland volunteered to search less accessible areas, while local residents who knew the terrain well formed their own search teams. The response demonstrated the deep respect and affection that the community felt for Mark, and the recognition that he had dedicated his life to serving others. The search expanded throughout the afternoon and into the evening, with teams methodically covering every trail, every cave, every ravine, and every possible location where Mark might have encountered trouble. Search dogs were brought in from Columbus, their sensitive noses hoping to pick up any trace of Mark's scent that might lead to answers. The dogs followed several potential trails, but none led to any definitive discoveries. Sheriff Robert Taylor coordinated the law enforcement response, bringing in specialized equipment including portable lighting systems, communications equipment, and medical supplies in case Mark was found injured but alive. The sheriff had known Mark personally for over a decade and considered him one of the most reliable and competent people he had ever worked with. Mark Henderson is not the kind of person who makes careless mistakes, Sheriff Taylor told the assembled search teams as darkness began to fall. If he's in trouble, it's because something unexpected happened, not because he took unnecessary risks or failed to follow proper procedures. Sarah Henderson arrived at the park around 4 o'clock, her face pale with worry but her resolve firm. She had left work immediately upon receiving the call about Mark's disappearance, and she knew the terrain almost as well as Mark did, having accompanied him on countless off-duty hikes over the years. Sarah insisted on joining the search efforts, despite gentle suggestions from law enforcement that she might be more comfortable waiting at home. Mark would never abandon his post voluntarily, Sarah told the assembled search teams as darkness began to fall. Something happened to him out there, and I'm not going home until we find out what. He's helped countless people over the years, and now it's our turn to help him. Emma and Grace Henderson arrived at the park shortly after their mother, having been picked up from school by a family friend who understood the gravity of the situation. The 17-year-old twins were shaken by their father's disappearance but determined to participate in the search efforts. Both girls were experienced hikers who knew the park well, and they were assigned to search teams working in areas they had visited frequently with their family. The first day of searching yielded frustrating results. Absolutely no trace of Mark Henderson beyond the location where college students had last seen him. No torn clothing, no dropped equipment, no footprints leading away from the trail, no signs of struggle or distress, no evidence of an accident or medical emergency. It was as if he had simply vanished into the Ohio wilderness he knew better than anyone else. Professional search and rescue coordinators arrived the next morning, bringing sophisticated equipment and specialized expertise in missing person cases. Captain Linda Rodriguez from the Ohio Emergency Management Agency established a command center at the park headquarters and began organizing search efforts using grid patterns designed to ensure no area was overlooked. The systematic approach divided the park into sections, with each team responsible for thoroughly searching their assigned area before moving on to the next zone. Helicopters from the Ohio State Highway Patrol flew overhead, their crews scanning the dense forest canopy for any sign of the missing ranger. The aerial search teams used thermal imaging equipment that could detect body heat even through tree cover, but the October weather made the technology less effective than it would have been during warmer months. Technical rescue specialists rappelled down cliff faces to search ledges and crevices that might not be visible from above. Cave rescue teams explored every known underground passage in the park, as well as several previously undiscovered chambers that were found during the intensive search efforts. The cave searches were particularly thorough because Mark's extensive knowledge of the park included familiarity with underground areas that few other people had ever explored. The media attention began almost immediately and grew rapidly as news of Mark's disappearance spread beyond local outlets. Mark's disappearance struck a chord throughout Ohio and beyond, partly because of his stellar reputation, and partly because the circumstances were so baffling. Local television stations sent crews to broadcast live updates from the park, interviewing search team leaders and community members who knew Mark personally. Newspapers throughout the Midwest ran front-page stories featuring Mark's photograph and appealing for any information that might help locate him. The Columbus Dispatch, Cincinnati Enquirer and Cleveland Plain Dealer all sent reporters to cover the story, recognizing that it had captured public attention in a way that transcended typical missing person cases. Social media platforms buzzed with sharing requests and theories about what might have happened. Facebook groups dedicated to Ohio hiking and outdoor activities shared Mark's photo thousands of times, while Twitter users spread information about the search efforts using hashtags like Find Mark Henderson and Hocking Hills Search. The online attention brought additional volunteers to the search efforts and helped maintain public awareness of the case. Emma and Grace Henderson, Mark's 17-year-old daughters, struggled to maintain their normal routines while their father remained missing. Their high school classmates rallied around them with incredible support, organizing fundraisers to help with search expenses and creating awareness campaigns to keep Mark's disappearance in the public eye. Teachers and administrators at Logan High School showed remarkable flexibility, understanding that the teenagers found it nearly impossible to concentrate on homework or extracurricular activities, while such uncertainty dominated their lives. The homecoming dance they had been planning was postponed indefinitely, but the gesture meant less to the twins than the daily support they received from friends who understood that normal teenage concerns seemed trivial in the face of their family's crisis. The school counselor worked closely with both girls, helping them process their emotions while maintaining hope that their father would be found safely. As days turned into weeks, the intensive search efforts gradually scaled back, though they never stopped entirely. Professional search teams had covered every square foot of the park multiple times using different techniques and equipment. Cave rescue specialists had explored every known underground passage and several previously undiscovered chambers. Technical rock climbers had rappelled down cliff faces and examined every ledge where someone might have fallen or taken shelter. K-9 units from multiple agencies had followed every possible scent trail, but the results were inconclusive due to the heavy visitor traffic in the area and weather conditions that had degraded potential scent evidence. Metal detector teams had swept large areas looking for any dropped equipment or personal items that might provide clues about Mark's location or what had happened to him. The theories multiplied as quickly as the dead ends accumulated. Some investigators wondered if Mark had suffered a medical emergency, perhaps a heart attack or stroke, in a location so remote that his body hadn't been discovered yet. The possibility seemed unlikely given Mark's excellent physical condition and regular medical checkups, but it couldn't be ruled out entirely. Others speculated about the possibility of an accidental fall into one of the park's deep ravines, where thick vegetation might conceal remains indefinitely. The sandstone cliffs in the area were prone to occasional rockfalls, and it was possible that Mark had been in the wrong place at the wrong time when loose stone gave way. A few investigators suggested that Mark might have encountered someone with harmful intentions, though his reputation and the remote location made this seem unlikely. Mark was universally liked and respected, with no known enemies or personal conflicts that might motivate violence. The park's visitor traffic made it possible that he had encountered someone engaged in illegal activities, who might have viewed him as a threat, but there was no evidence to support this theory. Environmental hazards were also considered as possible explanations. The park contained numerous natural dangers, from hidden sinkholes to unstable rock formations that could trap or injure an unwary person. Mark's expertise made it unlikely that he would fall victim to obvious hazards, but even experienced outdoorsmen could encounter unexpected dangers in wilderness areas. Winter arrived in southeastern Ohio, with unusual severity that year, dumping record amounts of snow and creating conditions that made continued searching nearly impossible. The thick blanket of white that covered Hocking Hills was beautiful, but also heartbreaking for the Henderson family, who knew that their chances of finding Mark alive were diminishing with each passing day. The extreme weather also raised concerns that any evidence of Mark's fate might be further obscured or destroyed by freeze-thaw cycles, heavy snow loads, and spring flooding. Search coordinators made the difficult decision to suspend active searching until weather conditions improved, though they maintained plans to resume efforts as soon as possible. Sarah Henderson demonstrated remarkable strength throughout the ordeal, maintaining hope while also accepting the harsh realities of their situation. She continued working at the hospital, finding purpose in caring for others, even as her own family faced its greatest crisis. The community's support was overwhelming. Neighbors brought meals on a daily basis, friends provided transportation for Emma and Grace, and fellow rangers maintained a constant presence to offer assistance with anything the family needed. The local churches organized prayer vigils and support groups for the family, while community organizations established a fund to help with search expenses and to support the Henderson family during the extended crisis. The outpouring of support demonstrated the deep impact that Mark had made through his years of service to the community. Patricia Williams, Mark's supervisor and longtime colleague, coordinated with the Henderson family to ensure that the search efforts remained organized and effective, even as they transitioned from professional operations to volunteer activities. She also worked with park administration to maintain normal operations while dealing with the ongoing crisis and media attention. The official search was suspended after 3 months, though it was never officially closed. Patricia Williams made it clear that any new information or evidence would immediately trigger renewed efforts. She also ensured that routine patrols in the area remained more frequent than usual, with rangers always keeping an eye out for anything that might provide answers about their missing colleague. Spring brought renewed hope and determination as the snow melted and search conditions improved. Volunteer search groups continued organizing weekend expeditions throughout 2015, convinced that warmer weather and melted snow might reveal clues that winter had hidden. The Henderson family participated in many of these efforts, finding comfort in action even when results remained elusive. The spring searches were organized by a coalition of volunteer groups including local hiking clubs, church organizations, and outdoor recreation associations. These civilian search efforts were carefully coordinated with park officials to ensure safety and to avoid interfering with normal park operations. The volunteers brought fresh perspectives and tremendous dedication, though their efforts yielded no new evidence about Mark's disappearance. Years passed with agonizing slowness, each anniversary of Mark's disappearance bringing renewed media attention and fresh appeals for information. The case received periodic coverage in regional newspapers and television stations, especially around the anniversary date, but leads were virtually non-existent. Despite the continued attention and occasional tips from the public, no credible evidence emerged that advanced the investigation. Sarah eventually accepted a position with a grief counseling organization, channeling her pain into helping other families cope with similar tragedies. Her work with families of missing persons gave her a sense of purpose while honoring Mark's memory through service to others. She often spoke about the importance of maintaining hope while also accepting uncertainty, a difficult balance that she had learned through personal experience. Emma and Grace graduated from high school in 2015 and went on to college, carrying their father's love of nature into their chosen fields of environmental science and wildlife biology. Emma enrolled at Ohio State University to study environmental engineering, while Grace chose Ohio University's wildlife conservation program. Both young women were determined to honor their father's legacy through careers dedicated to protecting natural resources. The park where Mark had worked continued operating normally, but his absence was felt every single day. A memorial bench was installed at his favorite overlook in 2016, with a plaque reading, "In honor of Mark Henderson, who dedicated his life to protecting Ohio's natural treasures." The bench became a popular stopping point for visitors, many of whom left flowers or small tokens of remembrance. Patricia Williams retired in 2020, but not before training a new generation of rangers who learned about Mark's dedication and professionalism as the standard they should strive to achieve. She often told new employees about Mark's approach to the job, emphasizing his combination of technical competence, genuine care for visitors, and unwavering commitment to environmental protection. The new chief ranger, David Martinez, had never worked directly with Mark but inherited a workplace culture shaped by his example. Martinez implemented several policy changes inspired by lessons learned from Mark's disappearance, including enhanced communication protocols and improved safety procedures for rangers working alone in remote areas. Technology continued advancing during the years that Mark remained missing, opening new possibilities for search efforts and investigation techniques. Drones became increasingly sophisticated and affordable, offering capabilities that had been impossible or prohibitively expensive during the initial search efforts. Trail cameras with motion sensors and wireless connectivity were installed throughout the park, primarily for wildlife monitoring but also maintaining hope that they might capture some evidence related to the unsolved disappearance. GPS tracking technology improved dramatically, and new rangers were equipped with devices that provided real-time location monitoring and emergency communication capabilities. These technological advances might have prevented Mark's disappearance or enabled a quicker response, but they came too late to help in his case. Advances in forensic science also offered new hope for resolving old cases. DNA analysis techniques became more sensitive and could extract useful information from smaller or more degraded samples. Ground-penetrating radar technology improved, offering better capabilities for searching large areas for buried evidence. Thermal imaging and other remote sensing technologies became more accurate and accessible. In early 2023, nearly 9 years after Mark vanished, a group of nature photography enthusiasts from Cincinnati decided to explore Hocking Hills with their newest drone equipment. Jake Morrison and his girlfriend Lisa Chen were both amateur photographers who had discovered that aerial photography offered unique perspectives on Ohio's natural beauty that were impossible to achieve through traditional ground-based photography. Jake worked as a software engineer while Lisa was a high school biology teacher, and they shared a passion for outdoor recreation and nature photography. Their high-end drone was equipped with a powerful 4K camera capable of capturing incredibly detailed images from heights and angles impossible for traditional photography. The device also featured advanced stabilization technology that allowed for smooth, professional-quality video recording even in windy conditions. Jake and Lisa had visited Hocking Hills many times over the years, but they had never used drone technology to explore the area's canopy level. They were particularly interested in documenting the massive trees that had been growing in the park for centuries, some of which predated European settlement in Ohio. These ancient giants were difficult to appreciate fully from ground level, but aerial photography could reveal their true majesty and provide educational content for Lisa's biology classes. On March 18, 2023, Jake was piloting his drone near the Old Man's Cave area, focusing on a particularly impressive hemlock tree that appeared to be several hundred years old. The tree stood near the upper rim trail but was set back far enough from the main pathway that most visitors never noticed its remarkable size and age. Jake was interested in capturing the tree's full height and the complex ecosystem that had developed in its massive canopy. As Jake maneuvered his drone higher for a better angle, carefully avoiding the flight restrictions that protected park wildlife and visitor safety, Lisa noticed something unusual in the live video feed on Jake's controller screen. About 60 feet above the ground, wedged firmly in a fork between two massive branches, something metallic was reflecting sunlight in a way that didn't seem natural. "Can you get a closer look at that?" Lisa asked, pointing at the screen. "There's something caught up there that doesn't belong." Jake carefully navigated the drone closer to the object, adjusting the camera focus and zoom to capture clearer images. The drone's advanced stabilization system allowed him to hover steadily while examining the object from multiple angles. What they saw made them both gasp in astonishment. Clearly visible in the drone's high-definition camera was a ranger badge, still attached to a torn piece of olive green fabric that matched Ohio Park Service uniforms. "Oh my goodness," Lisa whispered, immediately understanding the significance of their discovery. "We need to call someone right away. This could be related to that ranger who disappeared years ago." Jake brought the drone back immediately, his hands shaking slightly as he realized they had potentially made a breakthrough in a case that had puzzled investigators for nearly a decade. They quickly reviewed the footage they had captured, confirming that the object was indeed what it appeared to be. The images clearly showed a metal badge with the distinctive Ohio state emblem, and what appeared to be additional equipment or fabric caught in the same location. Jake contacted park headquarters within minutes of making the discovery. Patricia Williams had retired, but her successor, Chief Ranger David Martinez, was familiar with Mark Henderson's case and recognized the importance of this development immediately. Martinez had been briefed extensively about the unsolved disappearance when he took over leadership of the park, and he understood that any potential evidence needed to be handled with extreme care. Within hours, a specialized tree climbing team had been assembled to retrieve the badge and any other evidence that might be present. The team included professional arborists, technical rescue specialists, and forensic experts who could ensure that any evidence was properly documented and preserved. The operation was complex due to the height of the object and the need to avoid damaging the ancient tree or any potential evidence. The retrieval operation was planned meticulously to ensure both safety and proper evidence handling. The tree climbing team used specialized equipment designed for working in sensitive environments, including ropes and hardware that would not damage the tree's bark or structure. Forensic photographers documented every step of the process to maintain a clear chain of evidence. As news of the discovery spread, anticipation and anxiety filled the park and the surrounding community. Sarah Henderson was notified about the discovery by Chief Ranger Martinez personally, and she was present at the park when the retrieval operation took place. Emma and Grace, now young women in their mid-20s, drove down from their respective locations to be with their mother during this crucial development. The retrieval operation took most of the day due to the technical challenges involved and the need to proceed carefully. When the lead climber, an experienced arborist named Tom Bradley, reached the badge's location 60 feet above the ground, he made additional discoveries that provided crucial pieces to the puzzle that had baffled investigators for nearly a decade. Along with Mark's ranger badge, there were fragments of his radio, pieces of his equipment belt, several pages from his logbook, and most significantly, a small waterproof container that contained additional notes that Mark had apparently written while he was in the tree. The evidence suggested that Mark had not only been in the tree but had spent a considerable amount of time there. The evidence suggested that Mark had climbed this tree deliberately, though why he would have done so remained unclear initially. However, the logbook pages contained entries that had never been seen before, notes that Mark had apparently written while he was in the tree, dated several days after his disappearance. The handwriting was definitely Mark's, though it showed signs of stress and deteriorating conditions. The entries revealed an incredible story of survival and determination that no one had imagined possible. According to Mark's own handwriting, he had been checking the damaged safety fencing when he noticed movement in the massive hemlock tree that suggested someone might be in distress among the upper branches. The notes indicated that Mark had initially thought he heard calls for help coming from the tree canopy. Without hesitation, Mark had climbed the tree to investigate what he believed might be a stranded hiker, or perhaps someone who had fallen and become trapped in the branches. The tree's massive size and complex branch structure made it possible for someone to become stranded at a dangerous height, particularly if they were injured or inexperienced with tree climbing. What Mark found in the tree was not a person, but rather evidence of extensive illegal activity that posed a serious threat to the park's ecosystem. Someone had been using the remote, elevated location as a base for harvesting rare plants and disturbing nesting sites of protected bird species. Mark's notes indicated that he had discovered extensive damage and had climbed higher to document the full extent of the environmental harm. The illegal activities included the harvesting of rare orchids and other protected plant species that were being removed from the park for sale to collectors. The perpetrators had also been disturbing bird nesting sites to steal eggs and young birds, activities that could have devastating impacts on local wildlife populations. Mark's notes described a sophisticated operation that had been going on for an extended period without detection. However, while Mark was in the upper reaches of the tree, taking photographs and making detailed notes about the illegal activities, a severe weather system had moved in much faster than meteorologists had predicted. High winds and a sudden, intense storm had made it impossible for Mark to climb down safely. According to his journal entries, he had decided to wait out the weather rather than risk a dangerous descent in conditions that could prove fatal. Mark's subsequent notes revealed that what was supposed to be a brief wait had turned into a life-threatening ordeal. The storm system had stalled over the area, producing several days of severe weather that made climbing down impossible. The high winds, driving rain, and dropping temperatures created conditions that would have been extremely dangerous for anyone attempting to climb down from such a height. Mark had been trapped in the tree with limited supplies, no way to contact the outside world after his radio was damaged by wind and rain, and no reasonable expectation that searchers would think to look for him 60 feet above the ground. His emergency supplies, designed for typical ranger activities, were inadequate for an extended survival situation in a tree during severe weather. The notes described Mark's efforts to stay warm and dry using his emergency blanket and whatever natural shelter the tree's canopy could provide. He had rationed his limited food and water supplies, hoping that the weather would improve quickly enough for him to attempt a descent. The handwriting in the later entries showed signs of deteriorating conditions and increasing stress. Mark had tried repeatedly to signal for help, using his whistle and attempting to attract attention from search aircraft that he could hear flying overhead. However, the thick canopy and his elevated position made it nearly impossible for searchers to spot him, even when they passed relatively close to his location. The search efforts had focused primarily on ground-level areas and had not included systematic examination of tree canopies. The final entries in Mark's recovered logbook were both heartbreaking and inspiring. Even as his situation became increasingly desperate, Mark continued documenting the illegal activities he had discovered, determined that his findings would eventually help protect the natural resources he had dedicated his life to preserving. He wrote detailed descriptions of the environmental damage, including locations of disturbed nesting sites and areas where rare plants had been harvested. He wrote messages to his family, expressing his love and pride in Sarah, Emma, and Grace. The notes revealed a man who remained focused on others even in the face of his own crisis. He reflected on his career and the satisfaction he had found in serving as a guardian of Ohio's natural treasures. He wrote about his hope that his discoveries would lead to better protection for the park's resources and wildlife. Mark also wrote practical information that he hoped would be useful to future investigators, including detailed observations about the weather conditions, his physical condition, and his assessment of different options for escaping his situation. Even in extremis, he maintained the methodical approach and attention to detail that had characterized his professional work. Mark's last written entry, dated 5 days after his disappearance, indicated that he had made the difficult decision to attempt a descent despite dangerous conditions, believing that staying in the tree any longer would certainly prove fatal. The physical evidence suggested that Mark had succeeded in climbing down quite far, but had encountered difficulties in the final stages of his descent, possibly due to exhaustion, hypothermia, or equipment failure. The investigation that followed the drone discovery revealed that Mark had indeed managed to document extensive evidence of the illegal activities he had discovered. His photographs and notes led to the identification and prosecution of individuals who had been systematically damaging the park's ecosystem for their own profit. The environmental crimes Mark had uncovered were far more extensive than anyone had realized, involving a network of collectors and dealers who specialized in rare native plants and protected wildlife. The criminal investigation that resulted from Mark's evidence led to multiple arrests and convictions. The illegal harvesting operation had been causing significant ecological damage for several years, affecting rare plant populations and disrupting critical wildlife habitats. Mark's sacrifice had not been in vain. His documentation of these crimes led to the prosecution of those responsible and the implementation of enhanced protection measures for the park's sensitive resources. The recovery of Mark's badge and the revelation of his final days brought a sense of closure to his family and the community that had mourned his loss for so many years. While the outcome was not what anyone had hoped for, understanding what had happened to Mark helped transform the tragedy into a testament to his character and dedication. The knowledge that he had died trying to protect the resources he loved provided some comfort to those who had wondered about his fate for so long. Sarah Henderson spoke at a memorial service that drew hundreds of people from throughout Ohio and beyond. She described her husband as someone who had lived and worked according to his deepest values, someone who had faced an impossible situation with courage and determination, and someone who had continued protecting the environment he loved even in his final moments. Mark's last act was to protect the natural resources that he had dedicated his life to preserving, Sarah told the gathered crowd. Even when his own life was in danger, he continued doing his job. That's the kind of man he was, and that's the legacy he leaves behind. The Mark Henderson Environmental Protection Fund was established to support ongoing conservation efforts and to provide advanced training for park rangers in emergency situations and environmental crime detection. The fund also supported research into improving communication technologies and safety equipment that might prevent similar tragedies in the future. Emma and Grace Henderson, now environmental professionals themselves, channeled their father's legacy into their own careers protecting natural resources. Emma had become an environmental engineer specializing in habitat restoration, while Grace worked as a wildlife biologist for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. They often spoke to groups about their father's dedication and the importance of environmental stewardship, carrying forward his passion for preserving Ohio's natural heritage for future generations. The ancient hemlock tree where Mark's badge was discovered became an unofficial memorial site, though park officials were careful to manage visitation to protect both the tree and visitor safety. A new interpretive trail was developed that highlighted the importance of environmental protection and the dedication of the rangers who worked to preserve natural areas for public enjoyment and ecological health. Jake Morrison and Lisa Chen, the drone enthusiasts whose discovery had finally provided answers, became advocates for using technology to assist in search and rescue operations. Their experience demonstrated how new tools could solve old mysteries and provide closure for families who had waited years for answers. They worked with law enforcement agencies to develop protocols for using drone technology in missing person investigations. Chief Ranger David Martinez implemented new protocols based on lessons learned from Mark's case, including enhanced communication systems that provided real-time location tracking, mandatory check-in procedures for rangers working alone, and improved coordination with weather monitoring services to ensure that personnel were warned of rapidly developing dangerous conditions. These changes were designed to honor Mark's memory by ensuring that other park employees would have better protection and support while performing their duties. The story of Mark Henderson's disappearance and the eventual discovery of his badge became a powerful reminder of the risks that park rangers and other environmental professionals face in the course of protecting natural resources. It also highlighted the dedication and sacrifice that often goes unrecognized in the daily work of preserving America's natural heritage for current and future generations. Most importantly, Mark's story demonstrated that even in tragedy, individuals can leave lasting legacies through their commitment to principles larger than themselves. His willingness to investigate environmental crimes even when it put him in danger, his determination to document his findings despite facing a life-threatening situation, and his continued focus on protection and service throughout his ordeal reflected the character that had made him such a respected and beloved member of his community. The lesson that emerged from this 9-year mystery was not just about the importance of advanced search technologies or improved safety protocols, though both were certainly valuable outcomes. The deeper lesson was about the power of dedication, integrity, and service to create meaning that transcends individual circumstances. Mark Henderson had spent his career protecting a place he loved, and even in his final days, he had continued that mission. For the hundreds of thousands of visitors who continue to enjoy Hocking Hills State Park each year, Mark's story serves as a reminder that the natural beauty they experience is protected and preserved through the work of dedicated individuals who consider environmental stewardship not just a job but a calling. The trails they hike, the overlooks they enjoy, and the wildlife they observe exist because people like Mark Henderson have committed their lives to ensuring that these treasures remain available for current and future generations. The ancient hemlock tree that held Mark's badge for nearly 9 years continues to grow, adding new rings each season as it has for centuries. It stands as a living monument to the connection between human dedication and natural preservation, a testament to the idea that protecting the environment is one of the most meaningful ways individuals can serve their communities and leave the world better than they found it. In the end, the mystery of the missing Ohio park ranger was solved not through traditional investigative methods, but through the intersection of technological innovation and unwavering determination to find answers. The drone that located Mark's badge represented the same spirit of exploration and discovery that had driven Mark throughout his career, the same curiosity about the natural world that had motivated him to climb that tree on an October day in 2014. The story reminds us that heroes often work quietly without recognition, protecting the places and resources that enrich all our lives. Mark Henderson's legacy lives on not just in the memorial bench that bears his name, but in the continuing work of environmental protection, in the improved safety protocols that protect other rangers, in the prosecution of those who would harm natural resources for personal gain, and in the ongoing appreciation for Ohio's natural treasures that his dedication helped preserve. The Henderson family continues to visit Hocking Hills regularly, finding peace and connection to Mark's memory in the places he loved most. They often bring visitors to the memorial bench and share stories about Mark's dedication to protecting the natural world. The park remains a source of comfort and inspiration for them, a living testament to the values that Mark embodied throughout his life and career. As new technologies continue to develop and new challenges emerge in environmental protection, Mark Henderson's story serves as a reminder of the human element that remains central to conservation work. Technology can provide tools and capabilities that make the work easier and safer, but the fundamental commitment to protecting natural resources for future generations still depends on individuals who are willing to dedicate their lives to this important mission. The legacy of Mark Henderson continues to inspire new generations of environmental professionals who understand that their work is about more than just managing natural resources. It's about preserving the connections between people and the natural world that sustain both our physical and spiritual well-being. His story demonstrates that even in the face of tragedy, dedication to meaningful work can create lasting positive impact that extends far beyond any single individual's lifetime.